January 6, 1944. Dawn breaks over the cold, grey expanse of Omaha Beach. Mist rises from the channel, clinging to the sand like a shroud. The rhythmic pounding of distant artillery echoes over the cliffs, mingling with the low hum of naval guns offshore. Landing craft bob in the choppy waters, their metal hulls groaning under the weight of men and machinery. Soldiers, faces streaked with grime and fear, grip rifles and supplies, hearts pounding with anticipation. Each wave brings new tension, each breath a reminder of what awaits on the fortified sands ahead. Observers on the cliffs note the glint of machine guns in the early light, the barbed wire twisted against the horizon, the towering obstacles designed to break an assault before it even begins. The cold bites through uniforms, yet the men push forward, driven by duty, discipline, and the silent weight of history pressing down upon them. In this crucible of chaos, one U.S. general watches, calculating, directing, ready to turn the tide. Every decision, every order, will determine whether Omaha Beach becomes a grave or a gateway. The moment of reckoning approaches, measured in waves, gunfire, and the first steps onto the sand. By early 1944, the world had been engulfed in war for nearly 5 years. Europe was carved into territories of occupation, resistance, and uncertainty. Nazi Germany, having swept through Poland, France, and much of Western Europe, fortified its borders in anticipation of an inevitable Allied counterattack. The Atlantic Wall, a massive network of bunkers, artillery positions, and coastal defenses, stretched from Norway to the Spanish coast, designed to make any seaborne invasion a near impossible task. Intelligence reports from the Allies revealed the depth and scale of these fortifications, as well as the formidable German divisions stationed along the coast. The United States and Britain, joined by Canadian and other Allied forces, prepared a vast operation, overseeing the movement of men, equipment, and supplies across the Channel while keeping the enemy in strategic uncertainty. Training intensified inland, where soldiers practiced landing craft maneuvers, coordinated with armored units, and rehearsed clearing obstacles under fire. Every operation simulated the chaos expected on Normandy's beaches, where tides, currents, and terrain would dictate survival. The planners considered countless variables, timing of air raids, naval bombardments, and the sequence of landings to ensure that the initial waves could establish a foothold. For the soldiers, this preparation was both mental and physical, a relentless conditioning to steel nerves for the moment they would meet enemy fire. The U.S. general assigned to Omaha Beach studied the terrain and enemy placements with exacting precision. Maps, aerial photographs, and intelligence intercepts became tools to anticipate German responses. He had to understand not only the beach itself, but the broader context of the invasion, how the landings at Utah, Gold, Juno, and Sword beaches would interact, how air superiority would support the assault, and how logistics would sustain the momentum once the beachhead was established. Coordination with British and Canadian counterparts required meticulous timing and communication, leaving no margin for error. Every soldier's action, every landing craft, every barrage, had to align with a plan that balanced audacity with caution. Allied naval forces amassed offshore, bringing hundreds of ships armed with artillery to suppress German defenses. Bombers from the Royal Air Force and the U.S. Army Air Forces prepared sorties aimed at weakening fortifications and cutting supply lines, though fog, weather, and entrenched positions made complete destruction unlikely. The Allies relied on deception as well. Phantom armies, dummy parachute drops, and false radio traffic diverted German attention from the true landing zones, buying precious hours. The success of D-Day depended on every element functioning in perfect synchrony, but uncertainty and chaos remained constant companions. The human element weighed heavily. Soldiers, fresh from training camps, wrote letters, prayed silently, and gripped their rifles with trembling hands. Engineers rehearsed clearing obstacles that could rip apart men and machines alike. Medics readied stretchers and supply caches, knowing the casualties would be staggering. Officers studied chains of command and contingency plans, aware that individual initiative might determine survival in moments when communication failed. Behind every logistical detail was a stark recognition. Omaha Beach could become a bloodbath if the first hours faltered. Amid this immense preparation, the U.S. general's personal role crystallized, Unlike many commanders stationed in rear positions, he observed, evaluated, and positioned himself where decisions would be immediate and consequences unforgiving. His experience in prior campaigns had honed an understanding of how chaos could be managed through decisive leadership, rapid adaptation, and the ability to anticipate enemy reactions. He balanced risk with opportunity, recognizing that in the maelstrom of D-Day, a single miscalculation could reverberate across the entire operation. His strategy would focus on timing, terrain exploitation, and motivating soldiers to act under conditions no training could fully replicate. The weeks leading up to June 6 involved relentless movement of men and materiel across southern England. Engineers improved landing craft designs, ammunition and rations were stockpiled, and communication networks were stress-tested. Every soldier understood that the operation's success relied on precise execution. Yet no one could predict the exact moment artillery would scream across the beach or how German defenders would respond. Despite the uncertainty, a sense of purpose permeated the ranks. This was not just an assault, but the opening strike that could turn the tide of the war in Western Europe. Every night the US general reviewed maps and intelligence reports, plotting how units would land, navigate obstacles, and consolidate positions. He noted the elevation of cliffs, the placement of machine gun nests, and the expected trajectory of naval bombardments. His focus was methodical, devoid of panic, concentrated entirely on converting preparation into survival and operational success. Soldiers trusted him not because he promised safety, he could not, but because he understood the mechanics of warfare, the human element, and the stakes involved. His orders would become the linchpin for the first wave, and the decisions made in those early hours would define Omaha Beach's fate. As June 6 approached, weather became a central concern. The English Channel, notoriously fickle, threatened to delay the invasion. Tides, wind, and cloud cover could render landing craft vulnerable or obscure aerial support. Meteorologists provided windows of opportunity that were narrow and unpredictable. Commanders debated the risks, weighing the possibility of stormy seas against the strategic necessity of surprise. The final decision rested on hours of precise observation. A brief break in poor weather would determine the timing of the assault. German defenses along Omaha Beach were formidable. The 352nd Infantry Division had fortified the cliffs with concrete bunkers, machine gun nests, and strategically placed artillery. Barbed wire and anti-tank obstacles littered the sand, designed to funnel attackers into kill zones. Mines were buried along the beach and in the approaches, invisible yet deadly. Intelligence indicated that the German command expected a landing somewhere along Normandy's coast, but underestimated its scale at Omaha. The defenders, however, were battle-hardened, trained to respond to amphibious assaults, and confident in their fortifications. The US general conducted reconnaissance and briefings with subordinate commanders, emphasizing the importance of synchronization. He dissected the beach into sectors, assigning landing waves to precise points to avoid congestion and maximize firepower. Engineers rehearsed demolitions and clearing obstacles, while artillery coordinators adjusted schedules to provide covering fire at exact intervals. Radio operators prepared for constant communication, knowing that miscommunication could lead to disaster. Morale became as critical as tactics. Soldiers needed clarity and confidence to move under fire, and the general's presence reinforced both. Logistics stretched from southern England across the Channel. Thousands of vehicles, tons of ammunition, rations, and medical supplies awaited off the coast, ready to be deployed at precise moments. Landing craft, each packed with men and equipment, would traverse treacherous waters under enemy observation. Supply chains were vulnerable to both German artillery and unpredictable seas. Commanders had to anticipate contingencies, ensuring that even if initial waves suffered heavy losses, reinforcement and resupply could sustain the beachhead. The Allies implemented diversionary measures to confuse German intelligence. Fake radio transmissions simulated troop movements away from Omaha, and decoy landing craft were deployed along other sectors. Paratroopers were dropped inland in areas intended to mislead the enemy about the invasion's true scale. These actions aimed to divide German attention, creating openings for the assaulting forces. The US general incorporated these deceptions into his broader plan, calculating how they would interact with the chaos on the beach and the timing of his own unit's advance. Soldiers' perspectives varied. Some viewed the operation with every element aligned: weather, intelligence, logistics, naval and air support, and troop readiness. The stage was set. Omaha Beach awaited, a narrow strip of sand between the Atlantic and the fortified cliffs, where history would be decided. The soldiers would soon face the full force of German defenses, and the U.S. general's strategies would determine whether their courage could translate into victory or whether the beach would become a tomb. The human dimension of Omaha Beach was immediate and visceral. Soldiers clutched rifles with white-knuckled determination, eyes scanning the horizon for the first signs of enemy fire. Training could prepare them for obstacles, but it could not steel them for the cacophony of artillery, machine guns, and shouted orders. Every man faced a personal reckoning, to advance under relentless fire or succumb to the instinct to survive. Medics moved in tense choreography, anticipating injuries before they occurred, while officers attempted to maintain cohesion in units fragmented by chaos. The human factor was unpredictable. Small acts of initiative or hesitation could ripple outward, affecting entire waves. Morale was tested not only by fear but by the weight of responsibility. Each soldier carried not only a weapon but the collective hope of the operation, and the knowledge that failure at Omaha could imperil the broader Normandy landings. Tactical considerations defined every movement on the beach. The U.S. general had divided Omaha into sectors, each with specific objectives and timed waves. Landing craft approached under naval gunfire, aiming to deploy soldiers in zones that maximized cover and minimized exposure to fortified positions. Engineers worked under fire to clear obstacles, creating lanes for infantry and vehicles. Coordination between units was critical. Artillery had to suppress bunkers at precise moments. Smoke screens had to obscure movements, and reinforcements had to land before enemy fire could regroup. Tactical miscalculations could halt momentum and turn the beach into a kill zone. The general's meticulous planning anticipated contingencies, but execution relied on split-second decisions in a chaotic environment. Technological factors shaped both threat and advantage. Landing craft were engineered to withstand rough seas and armored assaults, yet were vulnerable to mines and artillery. Weapons ranged from standard-issue rifles to flamethrowers and demolition charges designed to breach fortifications. Communications relied on field radios and runners, both susceptible to disruption. The Allies leveraged naval artillery and air bombardment to reduce German defenses, though many bunkers survived with crews ready to engage. Technology could provide an edge, but only when integrated into cohesive tactics and coordinated with human execution. Failures in equipment or timing could be catastrophic, underscoring the interdependence of planning, hardware, and human resolve. Leadership at Omaha Beach demanded clarity under pressure. The U.S. general oversaw not just the landing of troops, but the orchestration of complex overlapping operations. Decisions about timing, positioning, and resource allocation had immediate consequences. His experience in prior campaigns allowed him to anticipate bottlenecks and potential failures, directing units to exploit openings or adapt to resistance. Leadership was also moral. Soldiers looked to him for resolve, guidance, and reassurance that their sacrifice had purpose. His ability to act decisively amid confusion became a critical factor in converting a high-casualty landing into a sustainable foothold. The enemy perspective defined the challenge. German forces at Omaha had prepared for an invasion they expected but could not precisely predict. Machine guns, mortars, artillery, and fortified bunkers created overlapping fields of fire. Soldiers had high ground advantage and intimate knowledge of the beach's layout. Their tactics aimed to inflict maximum casualties during the initial assault, using obstacles to channel attackers into lethal zones. The U.S. general's strategy required not only confronting these defenses but anticipating German responses to diversionary maneuvers and fluctuating Allied movements. Understanding the enemy's psychology and doctrine was as important as physical positioning. Moral and ethical considerations framed the operation's stakes. While the objective was military, civilian populations were at risk, and soldiers faced choices that would test their humanity under extreme conditions. Decisions about firing, advancing, engaging had immediate human consequences. Every obstacle cleared, every bunker neutralized, carried both strategic and moral weight. The US general understood that leadership extended beyond tactical calculations. It involved recognizing the human cost of war while achieving essential objectives. The combination of human resilience, tactical design, technological capability, leadership, enemy strategy, and moral weight converged on Omaha Beach. Each element alone was insufficient. Success required synchronization across all domains. The general's ability to integrate these factors would determine whether the first hours of D-Day would achieve a foothold or descend into unmitigated disaster. The beach, the men, the weapons, and the plans were ready. What remained was the execution under fire, the crucible in which every preparation would be tested. Leadership became the fulcrum of survival and success on Omaha Beach. The US general demonstrated a combination of foresight, adaptability, and direct engagement that shaped the unfolding assault. Unlike commanders stationed behind lines, he positioned himself close enough to observe and respond to evolving threats. Orders were issued with precision, emphasizing initiative within strict operational parameters. Small units relied on his guidance to navigate the chaos of obstacles, incoming fire, and disoriented waves of troops. His decisions on timing, prioritization of targets, and allocation of reinforcements transformed potential bottlenecks into manageable advances. Leadership under fire was not abstract. It translated directly into lives saved, objectives secured, and the eventual establishment of a beachhead. From the enemy perspective, the German defenders capitalized on terrain and fortifications. Machine gun nests, artillery positions, and concealed bunkers created interlocking fields of fire. Soldiers on Omaha were experienced and disciplined, trained to repel amphibious assaults. The general's understanding of German tactics, anticipating choke points, likely fields of fire, and defensive routines, enabled him to direct countermeasures that minimized casualties and maintained momentum. By predicting enemy behavior, he could assign forces where impact would be greatest, turning static defenses into exploitable vulnerabilities. Tactical and operational planning intersected with technology. Landing craft, amphibious tanks, and demolition equipment had to function flawlessly under extreme conditions. Obstacles in the sand, mines, and barbed wire impeded movement, forcing soldiers to rely on engineering units and pre-planned lanes. Naval gunfire and air support were intended to suppress the enemy, but many fortifications survived. The general coordinated timing so that troops could exploit brief windows of reduced resistance, using combined arms to break through German positions. Technological superiority required precise integration with human execution to achieve objectives. The human experience remained central. Soldiers confronted fear, exhaustion, and the weight of responsibility. The first waves faced near immediate casualties, yet cohesion persisted in pockets due to training, discipline, and leadership. Individual initiative proved decisive. Small teams breaching a bunker or flanking a machine gun nest altered the trajectory of their sector. Medics, engineers, and communications personnel operated under extreme duress, their actions enabling frontline advances. Human resilience was tested continuously, and the general's coordination amplified the effectiveness of personal initiative. Moral dimensions shaped decisions amid carnage. Orders were executed with the understanding that lives would be lost, and ethical choices were unavoidable. Leaders had to balance aggressive advancement with minimizing unnecessary deaths, recognizing both the strategic necessity and the human cost. The general's awareness of this balance informed decisions about timing, allocation of reinforcements, and directing units to exploit gaps rather than force frontal assaults unnecessarily. Integration of all angles, human, tactical, technological, leadership, enemy, moral, defined the broader success of the Omaha Beach landing. Each factor reinforced the others, creating conditions under which a beach littered with obstacles and under concentrated fire could be penetrated and held. The US general's decisions linked strategy to execution, transforming preparation into tangible results. As the first waves pushed inland, the outcome of the initial assault became clearer, setting the stage for the turning point where coordination, courage, and leadership would converge to secure the beach and enable the broader Normandy campaign. The first light of June 6, 1944, revealed Omaha Beach in its stark reality, a narrow strip of sand hemmed by cliffs, dotted with barbed wire, mines, and obstacles. Landing craft surged forward, their engines straining against choppy waters. Soldiers braced for impact, rifles ready, hearts hammering against the silence before the storm of German fire. As the ramps dropped, men were met with a barrage from hidden machine gun nests, artillery cutting the sand like steel blades. Chaos erupted instantly. Waves of men fell, some swept back by the surf, others struck down by bullets and shrapnel. Smoke, sand, and salt mingled, reducing visibility to a blur of movement and terror. Engineers scrambled to clear obstacles, many under direct fire, while officers attempted to maintain unit cohesion amidst screaming and confusion. The U.S. general moved along observation points, radios crackling with fragmented reports. His eyes scanned the sectors, noting which landing waves were pinned, which units advanced, and where reinforcements were needed. Decisions were immediate: reallocate men, adjust artillery fire, signal smoke screens, and direct tank support through cleared lanes. Timing became critical. Every second a landing craft stalled under fire increased casualties and threatened the momentum necessary to secure the beach. Artillery offshore hammered German positions, but many bunkers withstood the bombardment. Soldiers adapted, using limited cover behind obstacles, craters, and debris. Small groups flanked positions, neutralizing machine gun nests with grenades and flamethrowers. Medics rushed into exposed areas, dragging the wounded to relative safety. Each tactical maneuver required coordination, courage, and instant decision-making. The general's presence and command structure enabled these micro-adjustments, turning chaos into manageable advances. By mid-morning, initial objectives were partially achieved, but losses were severe. Commanders relayed reports of pinned waves and stalled reinforcements. The general anticipated German countermeasures, ordering supporting fire and redirecting units to exploit weakened sectors. Soldiers pressed forward despite exhaustion, fear, and mounting casualties. Success depended on momentum, adaptability, and the integration of leadership, tactics, and technology under relentless pressure. The first hours of landing defined the assault's character: intense, chaotic, and deadly. Small decisions by individuals, engineers clearing obstacles, soldiers flanking a bunker, medics saving lives, intersected with strategic oversight. The general's role became increasingly apparent. He coordinated, adapted, and imposed order where confusion threatened to collapse the operation. Every move he directed had immediate consequences, each one a step toward consolidating the beachhead. The early afternoon brought incremental progress. Certain sectors were secured, obstacles cleared, and small pockets of German resistance neutralized. Yet the beach remained contested, with casualties mounting and terrain unforgiving. The intensity of the first wave would give way to a critical moment where leadership decisions, timing, and coordinated assaults would determine whether Omaha Beach could transition from a scene of chaos into a foothold for the Allied advance. By mid-afternoon, the situation on Omaha Beach began to pivot. Initial waves had been decimated, but the U.S. general's coordinated adjustments shifted the momentum. Reinforcements were redirected to sectors where progress had stalled. Engineers cleared additional lanes through obstacles, and artillery was recalibrated to suppress remaining strongpoints. Small unit leaders, empowered by prior orders and situational autonomy, exploited these openings, neutralizing bunkers and machine gun nests one by one. Coordination between infantry, armor, and naval fire became precise despite the chaos, allowing forces to push inland. A pivotal moment came near the eastern sector, where German resistance was concentrated on a bluff commanding a wide stretch of beach. The general ordered a combined assault, tanks supporting infantry under covering fire, engineers clearing mines, and smoke deployed to obscure enemy sightlines. Soldiers executed with discipline under fire, storming bunkers while tanks suppressed flanking positions. The enemy, pressured on multiple fronts, began to withdraw or surrender, creating a gap in the defensive line. This breakthrough allowed waves behind them to advance with reduced casualties, stabilizing the overall landing. Throughout this period, leadership decisions proved decisive. The general anticipated German counterattacks, maintaining reserves in positions to plug gaps or reinforce faltering sectors. Communications, though strained, allowed real-time adjustments, ensuring that momentum was not lost. Officers and NCOs executed complex orders under extreme duress, bridging the gap between strategic intent and tactical reality. Human endurance and initiative, combined with careful orchestration of firepower and movement, transformed isolated successes into a contiguous beachhead. By late afternoon, Omaha Beach was largely secured. The initial chaos gave way to organized consolidation. Casualties remained high, but the beachhead held. Supply routes were established, wounded evacuated, and positions reinforced in preparation for further inland advances. The U.S. general's ability to integrate planning, adaptability, and decisive leadership had converted potential disaster into a strategic foothold. His decisions, made under pressure, directly influenced survival rates, operational effectiveness, and the future of the Normandy invasion. The breakthrough at Omaha Beach did not signal the end of struggle. German resistance continued inland, and securing the entire Normandy region would require sustained effort. Yet the decisive actions of the general and his forces had turned the tide of the first assault. Momentum was established, leadership validated, and a critical segment of the Allied plan achieved. The success of this day would echo throughout the campaign, providing both a tactical and symbolic victory. The immediate aftermath of Omaha Beach revealed the human and material cost of the assault. Casualty reports were staggering. Thousands of soldiers were killed or wounded in the initial hours, their bodies scattered across sand and surf. Medical units worked under constant threat, establishing field stations on precarious terrain to stabilize the injured. Every casualty underscored the brutal reality of the operation and the accuracy of German defenses. Despite these losses, a foothold had been secured, enabling the flow of reinforcements, supplies, and equipment necessary for further inland operations. The beach became both a grave and a gateway, its sand marked by the intersection of human courage and the lethality of war. Naval and artillery support had proved essential. Bombardments, though imperfect, had suppressed many fortifications enough to allow infantry and armor to advance. Engineers continued clearing obstacles, mines, and debris, transforming a deadly coastline into a functional entry point for the Allied campaign. Soldiers consolidated positions, establishing defensive lines to repel potential counterattacks. Communication networks, while strained by chaos, ensured that orders reached units effectively, allowing leadership to maintain operational coherence. Reports from the field highlighted the decisive influence of leadership. The U.S. general's presence and rapid decision-making allowed units to adapt to unexpected resistance and capitalize on emerging opportunities. Subordinate commanders, empowered to act within structured plans, executed maneuvers that minimized further losses while exploiting German vulnerabilities. The integration of human initiative, tactical planning, and technological support demonstrated the critical importance of command under fire. German forces, though battered and disoriented by combined assaults, remained capable of localized counterattacks. Intelligence indicated significant defensive positions remained inland, necessitating continued vigilance. Casualties among the German 352nd Infantry Division were high, but retreating units preserved enough cohesion to slow Allied progress beyond the immediate beachhead. The interplay of exhausted Allied units and still capable German defenders shaped the operational reality of the days following the landing. Supply chains quickly became a lifeline. Landing craft, previously focused on initial waves, now ferried reinforcements, heavy weapons, and essential provisions to sustain the beachhead. Field hospitals were established on higher ground, stabilizing the wounded and facilitating evacuation to ships offshore. Every logistical success translated into tactical advantage, ensuring that soldiers could maintain pressure on German positions despite exhaustion and continued resistance. Morale among Allied troops, tempered by heavy losses, reflected both shock and determination. Survivors of the initial waves bore witness to the scale of devastation, yet the knowledge that the beach was held and that momentum existed provided a critical psychological anchor. Letters, reports, and after-action accounts emphasized both fear and resolve, illustrating how human endurance interacted with strategic outcomes. The securing of Omaha Beach marked the transition from chaotic assault to controlled operation. Despite immense casualties, the beachhead functioned as intended, a platform for further offensives into Normandy. The immediate aftermath illustrated the duality of victory and loss, demonstrating how leadership, coordination, and resilience translated into tangible operational success under conditions of extreme adversity. As the following days unfolded, Omaha Beach transitioned from a contested shoreline to a vital artery for the Allied advance into Normandy. Reinforcements and supplies flowed steadily, enabling sustained pressure against German positions further inland. Engineers and logistics units worked tirelessly to maintain landing lanes, repair damaged equipment, and establish defensive fortifications to protect the growing beachhead. Each successful landing reinforced the strategic utility of Omaha, transforming a site of initial carnage into a platform for operational momentum. German forces, despite localized counterattacks, struggled to regroup. Losses among officers and key personnel disrupted command cohesion, while artillery and machine gun positions had been largely neutralized or bypassed. Intelligence indicated that morale among defenders was deteriorating, as reports of Allied successes at neighboring beaches compounded the psychological strain. The U.S. general anticipated these vulnerabilities, directing inland pushes to exploit gaps and secure critical terrain. The integration of timing, terrain awareness, and continuous adaptation allowed Allied forces to maintain pressure, preventing the enemy from consolidating a coherent defense. Casualty management remained a central concern. Thousands of wounded had been evacuated to ships offshore or field hospitals, while medical personnel stabilized hundreds more on site. Despite these challenges, the sustained flow of men and materiel allowed units to rotate and maintain offensive capacity. The ability to absorb initial losses and continue advancing demonstrated the effectiveness of prior planning and the adaptability of command structures under extreme conditions. The psychological impact extended beyond the battlefield. Soldiers, though traumatized by the scale of casualties, observed tangible results, positions cleared, bunkers neutralized, and the beach secured. Reports emphasized both the horror and the accomplishment, revealing how leadership and preparation mitigated the full weight of chaos. The general's guidance remained central, as subordinate commanders continued to rely on his framework for coordinated action. Individual acts of courage persisted, but their effectiveness was magnified by strategic oversight and adaptive command decisions. Strategically, the capture of Omaha Beach ensured that the Allies could link all 5 landing zones across Normandy, creating a contiguous front and enabling sustained operations deeper into occupied France. Supplies, heavy equipment, and reinforcements could move inland, providing the logistical backbone for the broader campaign. The beachhead became the foundation for successive offensives, demonstrating how initial tactical success could translate into operational and strategic advantage. By the end of the first week, Omaha Beach had become emblematic of both sacrifice and effective military planning. The integration of human resilience, leadership, technology, and tactical execution had converted a potentially disastrous landing into a decisive foothold. German forces were compelled to retreat or face encirclement, while Allied momentum strengthened across the Normandy coast. The long-term impact of these actions would resonate in subsequent operations, influencing both military doctrine and the historical narrative of D-Day. The aftermath underscored a duality, the staggering human cost, contrasted with the operational triumph that enabled the liberation of Western Europe to proceed. The beach, once a site of near-immediate catastrophe, now functioned as the critical gateway through which the Allied advance could expand, securing the essential link between planning and execution, loss and victory. Omaha Beach became more than a battlefield. It was a testament to the intersection of strategy, leadership, and human endurance. The U.S. general's decisions had transformed chaos into order, bridging the gap between meticulous planning and unpredictable reality. Soldiers carried both the weight of loss and the momentum of success, their courage intertwined with tactical innovation and coordinated execution. The events of that day reshaped military thinking about amphibious operations, demonstrating how terrain, technology, and leadership could converge to overcome seemingly insurmountable defenses. Beyond tactics, Omaha illuminated the human dimension of warfare, fear, resilience, initiative, and moral responsibility operating under conditions of extreme stress. Every step onto the sand, every obstacle cleared, and every decision under fire contributed to a broader historical impact. Historically, the success at Omaha Beach enabled the Allies to establish a foothold in Normandy, sustain supply lines, and expand operations across France, ultimately accelerating the collapse of German occupation in Western Europe. Technologically and tactically, it validated combined arms operations and adaptive leadership under fire. Humanity was tested and revealed. How ordinary soldiers, guided by decisive leadership, could navigate chaos and achieve extraordinary outcomes. Omaha Beach endures as a symbol of calculated risk, disciplined courage, and the profound consequences of leadership under pressure. The U.S. general's role, though one among thousands of participants, exemplified the critical influence of command in shaping history. The sands of Normandy, marked by sacrifice and triumph, remain a reminder that strategic vision, human resolve, and the capacity to act decisively under fire define not only military success, but the enduring lessons of warfare itself.